Midnight shadows whisper your demons lurking in the glow. Ancient voices call our names through the fire and the flames. Demons are real, feel the fear, their whispers dancing your
Looking at the stars, bright lights in the sky. I ain't sure what it is, but it's making me fly. Spaceships zooming past, colors flashing by. I'm lost in the rhythm, feeling oh so high. UFOs and me, we're floating in the night, feeling airy free. Everything's just right. Alien friends wave, grooving side by side. In the cosmic dance, we just let it ride. Riding through the shadows, under the moon's gleam. Lost in a reggae beat like a perfect dream. UFOs and me, we're floating in the night, feeling airy free. Everything's just right. Alien friends wave, grooving side by side. In the cosmic dance, we just let it ride. Riding through the shadows, under the moon's gleam. Lost in the reggae beat, like a perfect dream. UFOs and me, we're floating in the night, feeling airy free. Everything's just right.
All right. Ba-ba-ba-ba-da-da. All right. Good, wonderful, wonderful morning. Friggin' raining out. Fuck the rain. Fuck everything. Today is a wonderful, wonderful day. We're having a great conversation about community and the importance of community and the importance of the world and just being a part of the world, because I seem to get into conversations with people all the time where we get into a conversation and somebody says, "Oh, I fucking hate calling people. I hate talking to new people, or I hate doing this and that," and I'm just like, why? Like, part of the world. Like, if you don't talk to people, you don't meet a girlfriend, you don't have a friend, you don't go anywhere or do anything, you don't become a part of anybody, of any group, of anything. And then, we touched into the basis of this too is we're seeing in our modern politics where the people who want to get into politics and into the things and get involved are on the fringe side or considered to be politically on the fringe side, which is, and then the people who are regular people don't want to be part of the fringe side of things, so they don't want to get involved. They just want to keep on going. And this goes all the way back to the beginning foundings of our country. Our original, see, uh, our original politics were all about individual states' rights and an individual state's right to govern itself. And as soon as we became a nation, that became apparent to many people involved that that's just not possible. We need to have some sort of centralized government to keep us all together. Because otherwise, it's the same thing that we talk about. It's the same thing that goes on. It's the same thing that we see in our modern politics, old politics. Otherwise, people just bicker. All they do is just bicker back and forth. If you don't have some sort of centralizing force or a sort of um, authoritative force or something like that. That's people, all they do is just bicker their points. They never want to come to a resolution, and everybody just always wants to be right. And we do this a lot, especially now in our days and just in our regular society. But by doing this, you're separating people from you. You're that's not a good way to explain it. Um you're never coming to a compromise. You're never joining together as a community, and we we thrive as a community. Our civilization thrives as a community, and we continue on thriving if we do things as a community. I was watching the parade, the army parade, which was an awesome parade. And the thing about that was it was great, but if you look at the back settings and how they set up things and what they did with it, it's they set aside over $50 million to repair the roads in Washington, D.C. after the parade. I mean, like, fully repair the roads. So, and then they planned it out. They set up a plan, and it would take them like a week of like traffic and doing it. This proves right away that we can fix all the freaking roads in our country, all of them, in just a few weeks, like in just a few months. It wouldn't even take a year because you could just hire local contractors, hire local communities, and get it done. And in each area, they set up a plan, and it would probably take like a year to do like one state, each state. And if each state started at the same time, then each state would have literally all 50 states would be done at the end of a year, and every single road would be fixed. But what divides us is our politics and our willingness to get things done. Because why wouldn't you want clean roads? You want your roads to be messed up, so you have to keep spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in new tires and all this shit every year, every 2 years. You want to, and then have to have extra money on the side because you might have hit that 5 foot wide pothole on the road. Like, why? Why would you want that? And it's proof that all we could do is is just debate with each other instead of actually getting something done. So all we do is debate with each other instead of actually getting things done. We could literally fix all the roads, no problem. Hire a bunch of teams, we could fix all our bridges, no problem. But like, we don't do that. And these are simple things. I mean, if you really think about it, roads have been perfected thousands of years ago. Thousands of years ago, the Romans perfected roads. And yet, I mean, literally, we build all of our roads because of Rome. We build them all the way across the world. That's what united Rome, was having the roads. People could just walk on the road. And this is even proof if you're a Christian and you believe in Jesus and the Bible. In the Bible, many stories about Jesus talk about him walking along the Roman roads and traveling from city to city. The Roman roads literally enabled Christianity and Jesus's message to spread. Literally, then after he's died, Saul, who hunted Jesus, then became Paul, used the Roman roads to spread the message of Jesus all the way through back to the capital, to Rome. So these roads were perfected thousands of years ago, and yet we're still not able to come together today and do these things. And this is a problem and a reflection of our modern community. Yes, of course, they were a military society. They had a military everything, but this was the reason why we built our roads today in our culture and in our society. If you look at history and historical records, you could see that actually a lot of the roads were organized and built only in the modern era. A lot of it was built during one, the Civil War, and two, afterwards in the wakes of World War One and World War Two. And the reason is because we needed to be able to move troops and supplies. It was the same reason why we built railroads, and because we needed to be able to get supplies across the country. Then during the Civil War, we needed those railroads to get military supplies across the country. And the reason why the North was able to win is because our logistics kept us going. Every person in a military knows that the military is almost all logistics. Everything you do is literally, fighting is like maybe at most like 10% of what an entire military is, what a war is. Like it's literally it's like 1% of a military and 10% of an entire war. It's like literally like you could have a bunch of troops, but if you don't have somebody bringing that guy more and more ammo, that guy's going to run out. And then we're back to fighting with sticks and clubs and swords and knives. I mean, that's really it. And then once you run out of that, what do you got? You got your teeth, or you give up. I mean, that's the only way. And we never give up. So you the only way is to keep on fighting. But all these things were achieved years and years ago, thousands of years ago. Not just in Rome, before Rome, there were tons of armies conquering people. Look at Greece, look at Persia, look at Egypt. All of them talk about having their supply lines, having their things. And then if you read into the texts that were written during the time, especially the historical records, if you read into the text and the historical records, what you realize is a lot of the records are talking about how the logistics behind the things, how they had to organize the community to have faith in the king, who was considered a representative of the god, if not a god themselves, have faith in the king and belief in the king, the ruler, in order to muster the strength of the people and the community to go to war. So if you read the ancient texts, like for example, in Egypt, with Ramses II, if you also known as Ramses the Great, if you look at text of Ramses II, one of the first things he talks about is how he had to announce that this was the plan, how he had to make announcements to the people, rally the troops, his supporters. He needed his community behind him. Today we think of ancient Egypt as absolute rulers, having absolute authority, military dictatorship. They were the gods incarnate, so their rule was law. But if that was true, why do we have written records of Ramses II and other Egyptian kings who we in our modern day call pharaohs? Which, fun fact, that word pharaoh is our modern representation of it. It's not actually what they called them. And so the problem is these, he would go and have to rally the people, rally the troops, rally the community. And yet he was supposedly had absolute authority. So obviously, right away, even though he's a representative of the god, he's not a commanding divine figure whose will is to be immediately respected for all of eternity, immediately without any consequence or question or whatever, but that's not the case. They all get questioned. They all have different, oh my god, they all have different issues and aspects to deal with. And then when you read about Ramses II military conquests, and they keep going, what they talk about is their supply line and how his troops are miles long, because it's the supply line and each troop is being supplied from the back to the front. And in the front, in those days, you always had the king and their rulers and their counselors. And then they had their forward force with them. And then the back troops were their support troops and their supply lines coming in all the way back to the home front. So military conquests would go as far as you could keep your supply line. This was true all the way through ancient Rome. This is why they built roads to supply their troops, to bring their communities together, to bring the word of the emperor together, of the Senate together to the people, because they knew that they needed the community. Look at Gladiator, the movie, right? One of the most true things that they say in accordance with history in that movie is Rome is the mob. Very simple statement and fact, but it's true. Rome was the people. Even with the emperor, Rome was the people. For example, we talk about Julius Caesar all the time, right? Julius Caesar was a military general, a man who had great conquests and vision for the empire, for the country he lived in, which he would eventually force into an empire. The Senate hated him and eventually, as we know, murdered him. But the people loved him. The people loved him so much that when the Senate, who ruled all their days of life, whose people were made up of oligarchical families, noble families, who weren't actually elected to their senatorial position, but given it to them by their birthright, quote unquote, they decided to kill Caesar. And the people who loved Caesar revolted and caused a 20-year civil war. horrible civil war, all the way until the point that when Octavian, the nephew, comes in and he changes his names to Caesar Augustus, Octavian comes in and becomes the champion military force. But even he is a noble family. In our own modern times, in our own country's history, we experience something similar. Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Ben Franklin. While not all of these people were from dynastical families, Thomas Jefferson was, George Washington was, and these people were invited to the First Continental Congress because of their upstandingness in the community. And upstandingness in the community in that time, or upstanding, this isn't even a word, I think, upstanding in the community in that time meant that they were from a noble family who was very wealthy. You know, they weren't noble as in the nobility of the ancient kings, but they were a family who's existed in this community for, you know, at least 3 generations. So at minimum 75 years. So we're talking about like 100 years in their eyes of these people. That was a dynastic family to them. So George Washington and his family qualified for this. Thomas Jefferson and his family qualified for this because their families lived in the area for generations and they were prominent slave holding, wealthy, you know, financially beneficial company people, you know, so they were able to get their position because of their upstanding in the community as wealthy and old family people. We do the same thing all throughout today. Look at mafia communities, for example, not just Italians but other ones too. You know, they look at the sense of community as joining together, you know, the sense of unification, how we're the same because we have the same history, we have the same bloodline, we have the same thing, we come from the same place. You know, we've been through a same or similar struggle. These are the types of things that, you know, they look at as well. Even local gangs and modern gangs do the same thing. You know, you look at, are you from the same area? Did you grow up in this poor, impoverished community? Blah, blah, blah. Whatever the case may be for that thing, it's always about the sense of unity. Even in our colleges, and, you know, we have fraternities and sororities, and all of that is the same thing about bringing people together in a sense of community and a sense of unity and a sense of purpose. That's the great thing about being in a fraternity is you don't have to have those terrible, awkward introductions all the time. You have that common ground of, hey, I'm in the fraternity, you're in the same fraternity, or in another fraternity, or whatever. We can hang out together because we have that common ground, that common unity, you know, and the same similar thing happens all throughout time. We do the same thing, and this all goes back to tribalism. Tribalism is not necessarily a bad thing because, in one aspect, we use tribalism to differentiate others, to separate others, to make others, you know, feel different or inferior or whatever the case may be to people not in that group. And yet, at the same time, tribalism is what brings us all together. We witnessed, especially during World War II, the modern rapid industrialization of the world. After in the late 18th century, it started.
really more mid 18th century, but towards the late 18th century, especially after the Civil War, we started rapidly industrializing. World War One, we kind of petered off, brought it back again. Then once World War Two came and we petered off again because of, the Great Depression and different things going on in the world and in our country, we had this rapid industrialization again and the sense of community coming together. Remember, it wasn't the men were off fighting. It was the women who worked in our factories, built planes, built submarines, built shit. Not all, obviously, not all 100% of the women, but you know what I mean. There was a lot of women because most of the men were out in the military. We had an entire community working for a military force. One of my favorite quotes from World War II posters, they actually used to have a poster of Superman. Superman, the comic book hero. Superman says, this is the quote. This is the quote. Ready? The whole quote. Quote. Superman says you can slap a Jap with war bonds and stamps. Superman says you can slap a Jap with war bonds and stamps. That was what they wrote on a friggin' poster to bring the community together because they knew that your little aspects of society define who you are. And in the future, even as an adult, even just with a superhero, look at me. An adult and I'm still obsessed with Batman. Still love all that shit. Like I still wear Batman shirts all the time, all day, whatever, like I don't care. And it's the same thing. So they knew this, and they knew that if they used this aspect of your sense of community, that you would be more supportive of the war effort. And so they would literally do many things like this. This isn't one of that's just one of many aspects of it. They had multiple Superman posters, multiple Batman posters, and other things. They would put multiple scenarios of Superman fighting the Germans and Batman and all those other things. Like everybody would be fighting against the enemy. They would join the war, and then there was this whole debate. I remember reading this historical no, what was it? It was a was it a podcast about how comic books in the 40s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. No, it was a documentary. Now I remember. It was a documentary on how comic books in the 30s, 40s, and 50s really affected our society, even as adults. And then I listened to this podcast later on, not, you know, just coincidentally, later on about how in the 50s there was this whole take the gore out of comic books and how comic books were actually banned for a while. They were too bloody, too realistic. And this is why we have like the POW and shit now instead of like, Superman punching a guy and blood being drawn all over the thing, which now you look at it and it's kind of silly because that's all over our society. I mean, look at any anime or manga or whatever, like, like it's all over the place. So it's kind of silly that that would be our thing. But in that time, it was a big deal to them. I mean, we're not so far removed in that time from the dressing super modestly and covering all our clothes and not showing more than your ankle of skin or whatever. I mean, we're not too far removed from that time. So to have that really riles up the community. What's interesting is riling up the community actually brings together, in most cases, community change for good or worse, but it brings together community change. And we see this all the time. Look at the 1300, the 1100s, the 1300s, the 1400s, the 15, 16, 17, 18, and 1900s. Every country needs somebody to blame. Who do they blame? They blame the Jews and they kick them out. And it goes to the worst one we know of, which was World War II, and they blame people, and it's terrible. It's a terrible things, untrue lies, whatever they were saying, but it riles up the community and it causes action for good or worse. Obviously, in this case, it was for worse. And so you could see that all these really terrible things can happen even when the community comes together. So, but it's still important because while those other communities were banding together to do these horrible things and build up their strength, other communities were banding together to fight against that. You saw this massive revitalization of American spirit, British spirit, French spirit, especially after the French were completely taken over. When the ones who escaped went to Britain, they rallied together and had a unified force. They had a unified belief. They fought with great sense of passion and community because their community was affected completely demolished. It's like witnessing your entire culture get wiped out. I mean, and in fact, it's pretty much almost what happened in the case of France. And so all these people rallied together in a sense of community and a sense of passion and pride in order to fight back because that's exactly what they needed to fight back. And it worked obviously eventually, with the help of others, of course. But the point is the sense of community is there. It's the sense of a rallying cry, maybe in a more militaristic description. So you know, even in our um, fantasy culture. For example, today we listen to or read a lot of or watch a lot of fantasy culture, fantasy fiction, sci-fi, all these different things, and all of that. Even when I'm sitting here writing my own stories and stuff, and short stories or whatever I'm working on, it's built upon, I notice all the time that whatever I'm writing about, whatever I'm doing, is built upon the sense of community. For example, well, for a few examples, let's keep going. You ever watch, popular shows today are the Dune movies and the Dune TV series. I don't know. If you know me and you've heard me talk before, the Dune TV series was absolute trash. The acting was okay from like three of the actors, but the rest of it was terrible. So uh, that was terrible. But the whole thing is based on community. Every group of people on each planet is now rallied together. The whole planet is unified in each area, with the exception of Dune. But even then, those people are unified in pockets and they have their shared sense of community in their enemy, the invaders, who are the Arrakis family and no, Atreides, the Atreides family who rule the fake planet Arrakis, which is actually named Dune, and all that stuff. So they have this sense of community, and each community works against each other. Even the what are they, the Bene Gesserits or whatever it's called, even them have a sense of unified community together, and being their sisters together is what unifies them in a group to make group action, to do things together as a group. And this is what is brings them all together. I mean, I'm listening to, we just talked about For Good or For Bad. I'm listening to this audiobook right now, and it's actually the second one in the series. The kingdom that they're in, this fantasy kingdom, think like middle age kings and queens, and whatever. They rule this entire civilization based on a lie. But the lie is what brings the community together. If they didn't have the lie, the people would revolt or separate or rebel or whatever the case may be. But they would go against the authority, is what the point is. And even though it's all based on a lie that's built on murder and whatever they want, it's literally the entire thing that brings them together. The lie is that, the other kingdom is evil and extinct, and we're the last people left on the earth, right? We're the last kingdom left. But then people leave and they find out that there's everybody else everywhere else, literally just right past the border. So you can build a community and unify the people together, even if it's based on a lie. Of course, we have wonderful good things throughout fantasy culture, throughout fantasy literature, and in our own modern culture. For example, and this sense of community is not lost on our modern leaders. Look at, after World War II, we needed a new sense of purpose for our community. We thought we would find that in fear of the communists. Turns out that while we had that sort of unification, what was even a stronger unification was the space race. What even gave us a stronger sense of community was the space race. Because fighting against communism and for the World War II in the Cold War, and I use quotes for many reasons, but in the Cold War, fighting against communism in our culture actually divided a lot of us. It didn't bring us together. It isolated pockets of our community. It gave our group of people an us versus them sense. And we already had this in our society ever since Thomas Jefferson and the two political parties and all of that. John Adams, all of those guys. But it was exacerbated because now you had community versus community, person versus person. You weren't sure if the person you were talking to or the person you knew your whole life was actually the enemy. You weren't sure of that. And so by not being sure of that, you create these isolating pockets of society, these groups that would literally isolate, defend against, separate from every other person. You would literally go, and this I would say culminated to a head during the McCarthy era when the what was called later on in our history books the Red Scare in our country, because you would literally look at your neighbor and say that guy might be a communist, report it to, the powers that be, McCarthy's people, and they would just take people off the street and say you were a communist, and that was the end of it. It's almost similar to the Salem witch trials. You had no proof, you could prove nothing, and yet you're putting somebody on trial with the promise of the death penalty. Just by pointing a finger at them, just by pointing a finger at a person, you could ruin their entire lives, and by claiming that there's something that they might not be, because simply you didn't like them, simply because you didn't agree with them. This is tribalism at our core. This is not community. This is separation. Community is about working together despite our differences. So just because somebody's slightly different than you doesn't mean you need to be totally separate from them. Doesn't mean you need to live separate from them, not talk to them, do all these other things. Just because somebody doesn't agree with you doesn't mean they're wrong, doesn't mean you're right either. It doesn't mean you're wrong either. You could be partly right or partly wrong. It's the world isn't black and white. It's a lot of gray in between. And so when you divide like this, like in our McCarthy era, you actually ended up separating our people, because you have people, and there are many stories of this, people not wanting to leave their homes, not wanting to go out because of fear of being called a communist simply by their neighbor that they knew didn't like them because of, whatever dispute 20 years ago. And this was a very real fact, a very real fear that people were having in the time. And yet, so this separated us. What brought people together was the idea of the space race, of making a great human accomplishment, making a great world culture accomplishment. And this is extremely important for our sense of society and our sense of community, because you need to be able to have something to work together on, and we have lost this again, once again. They always say history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, and it's so true, because we're here once again in our society that's separating ourselves. And this is why I find it so important to, and not just one episode, but multiple episodes, talking about unifying people and community and purpose. And the reason is because I see this all day in our modern culture and in our modern politics. We don't unite. We are constantly dividing each other. Just because one person's identifies as a Democrat and one person identifies as a Republican doesn't mean one or the other is evil. It just means that they believe a certain things on what they were taught, their experiences, and then what people tell them, and what they know from what they tell them, and those are the three things that it could only possibly be. And the other person who believes different things than you, same thing. They know those things because of what they've learned, what they've experienced, and then what people have told them. It's people, a lot of political commentators I find often are commenting on the fact that Trump was able to unify people despite their differences in beliefs, and they call it dictatorship, they call it, whatever they call it. But what it is a sense of bringing people together all at the same time. These people may or may not be crazy, may or may not be wrong, may or may not be whatever, but the sense of unified purpose is there. And that's what we're missing in our society. And that's what the Democratic Party is currently missing in our politics, is that unified sense of purpose, that unified sense of community. They don't have that. And this is why many political commentators look and they say, oh, where why are the Democratic Party struggling? Why are they losing people to the Republicans? Because the Republican Party is saying, hey, come be a part of our family, come be a part of us, unify with us. And the Democrats Party is saying, we're this and believe us, but don't associate with those other people. Don't be with those other people. Don't do things with those other people. And that doesn't make sense for the sense of community that we're in. It doesn't make sense for the sense of unifying the people, because you're dividing the people. You're saying it's us versus them. You're giving a tribalistic factor to it. And that's what the problem is the tribalism. Tribalism doesn't help us anymore. It hasn't helped us for thousands of years. If anything, all it's done is divide each other. If anything, it's proof in our histories of ancient Rome. Ancient Rome was able to conquer all these other lands, especially in Europe and Northern Europe and Britain and everything, because they were all tribal communities. They were unable to work together and to unify against Rome, against Caesar, against all the other Roman generals who went through with them and the emperors, because they were unable to unify against them. Only one of the fighters who was able to unify was Vercingetorix. And yet they were able to unify the people in their common enemy, but they weren't able to unify the people entirely. And this was apparent in their military for two reasons. One, because their military was not trained as a cohesive force like the Roman military was at this time. So they weren't able to fight against disciplined, well trained soldiers as effectively as the disciplined, well trained soldiers were able to fight against them. This is why they're able to take on the Romans were able to take on the greater numbers. Even though maybe Caesar has 10,000 soldiers and they have 30,000, well, you might as well have only 30, because none of them are trained, and if any of them are, and then they don't have any discipline, so if any of them get scared, they just run off. And this is what actually happened, not just in with Julius Caesar and Vercingetorix in the Battle of Elysium, with the largest unified Gallic force that will ever be seen against the Romans, but also with the consequential ones coming after. They also witnessed, once Vercingetorix and the other guy who was fighting with him, Cassius, I think his name was, um, literally, once Cassius's troops, we'll just call him Cassius for this thing, for this reference. Once his troops started to get defeated, even though he had 3 times the number of Julius Caesar, once they started to get defeated and see everybody started getting killed around them, they just started running. And even though Vercingetorix and his side of the force was still fighting, remember they were fighting against both sides with Julius Caesar in the middle, fighting both of them. When they were coming in, well, then these guys all ran, and now Caesar can focus his entire force on Vercingetorix, and then Vercingetorix lost. And that's what happened. So even though you can unify a sense of community immediately, unless it's a strong sense of community, it's not going to work. And you know what? I'm going to take a sip of water here because I've been talking for almost an hour straight already, and I'm thirsty. Mm. Wow, I was talking that whole time without the microphone. I'm sorry about that, chat. So they have this whole sense of community, and it unified them because they were fighting against the Romans for so long and witnessing their tyranny for so long that they literally would have no greater sense of community and unity than that. And they didn't need a greater sense of community and unity than that because they were witness to all the issues, all the problems, and everything. And so were their previous generations. So when the Germans and Germanic tribes and the Vandals and all those other tribes looked at them and they saw this holier than thou thought, these principles of terrible trade and military conquest and all these things, they literally looked and said, "This is not what we want. This is horrible. This is going to divide our sense of community." And indeed it did. It divided our sense of people, of of from the Roman way, I should say. And but this is a problem really continuing on. I mean, we go through these stages almost in a way of unity versus tribalism, you know, of us versus them. Today, in our modern politics, we really have an us versus them scenario. We really have an us versus them situation where most people can't even go and talk to the other person of a different political party because it's not us. It's not that tribal sense that you feel. That's not community. That's not unity. It's not working together. Community is a group of random people who are working together. I mean, it's literally the whole entire point of it. And so and then every person is retreating inward. You hear all the time about people saying they have social anxiety, or and when they're not part of something, they have the fear of missing out, FOMO, whatever. And it's either one or the other. You fear that you're missing out, but you have anxiety to do those things in the group, to be a part of the group. You don't want to be a part of the group because you are nervous or scared or whatever. You have that anxious feeling that you won't be accepted, even among your already group of friends. You feel like all these people are out to get you, like it's you and nobody else, and you hesitate. You feel like this person's a stranger even if you've known them for so long, because you don't agree wholeheartedly on everything. Well, if you wanted to agree with everybody on everything, just make a whole bunch of robots. Clone yourself. That's a great idea. Clone yourself, make a whole bunch of robots, do all these things, and then you could just talk to yourself and nobody else. Because community is about people working together and coming together. And why do we have this inner fear? It blows my mind. Blows my mind about how we have this inner fear of talking to people, and we'd rather isolate than even just go to a store. You have such anxiety where people don't even want to go to the supermarket because they don't want to be around people because they have anxiety to be around people. Like why? Who gives a shit? It's a freaking supermarket. If anything, that should give you a sense of unity and purpose, because you're all at the freaking store for the same freaking reason. You need food. You need something. You're buying something. You're there to purchase something. And you're there to purchase something. Nobody said you have to go there and socialize with the world. You're literally at a fucking supermarket. There's a purpose to it. There's a literal point to you being there, and the point has nothing to do with you socializing with people. So what is the problem? The point is you're going to the supermarket to buy groceries, to buy food, to buy some lumber to work on your home project, whatever the case may be, to buy a gift for your grandmother's birthday. You're at the store for a purpose. You don't need to fucking talk to fucking everybody. So your whole sense of anxiety about doing that is so stupid, because it's pointless and illogical. And to me, I don't care. I'll call you stupid all day, because it's literally illogical. You're going to a store to buy groceries. I mean, why do you have this fear to talk to people at a store? You don't have to talk to people. The only thing you have to do is buy fucking groceries. Makes no sense to me. So whatever, and then people do this all the time. You have this problem where you can't even talk to your neighbor. I mean, I go visit my parents, and their neighbor across the street is like one of the few neighbors of people that I ever talk to. I still talk to the guy all the time. How you doing, I say. Stand there at the driveway, at the end of the driveway, like it's whatever, and walk across from driveway to driveway, whatever. Hey, your lawn looks great. How you doing? Oh, my sister's mother's cousin is sick, and we went over to visit them, and the traffic and blah blah blah. And those are the things that unify people. I have a lawn that needs to be worked on. Hey, what kind of fertilizer you use? Your lawn looks better than mine. Oh, I use this one. Hey, don't worry about it. I bought an extra bag. Here you go. And if you didn't talk to them, you would have had to gone out and buy your own fertilizer, and you bought the wrong one, and now your lawn looks like shit compared to your neighbor. And so if you didn't talk to them, you didn't have the nice lawn. You have the shit lawn. And then you go on social media, and some dumbass is like, "Hey, do you know about these stock things that you could do that could make you money. And oh my God. And it's like, yeah, I read that in a fucking textbook. Like, you are no genius. Like, and then you go out there and, it blows my mind. For example, these people go out there and you go online and you listen to somebody who, is just some random person talking about whatever topic. Let's say it's stocks, right? And then they go and they read things, and I'm like, well, those are like the most basic things I learned in my economic courses in college before I got a degree and before I got my specializations to become a financial advisor. I mean, that's literally basic textbook shit. But I'm very glad that you are able to understand and comprehend this basic things. And I'm very glad that you're able to speak these very basic things to a very clear point to get these very basic things out to the masses, because uh, the masses don't know these basic things. So I'm glad you're able to say them in a very simple way that everybody can understand. But it doesn't make you special, fancy, whatever. It's just silly. And so, you go out there, but if you didn't go on there, you wouldn't have learned the most basic thing. So, I say it's not necessarily such a bad thing to go out there and listen to other people say even these most simple basic things, as long as it leads you to going out there and trying to learn more things, to trying to expand your knowledge and go out there and understand things. Because if you just keep listening to people who say the basic things and you tout them as a genius, then people who are like Einstein, who were real geniuses, will be like the divine gods to the rest of the masses, because nobody's going to have any sense of intelligence. Nobody's going to have any sense of things. You'd rather do this than go out there and talk to people, and this is why we are saying that the fringe of society, of political beliefs, of whatever, are the ones who are out there going to do these things. These fringe people, look at this horrible guy who just did this crazy shit killing those lawmakers in Minnesota. This guy is obviously some fringe wacko and whatever, but I mean, he's doing all these things for some political, purposeful reasons, and yet you could just go out there and find these people's address. Well, if you could just go out there and easily find this person's address, you could also go out there and mail them a letter to their home and write down your political grievances and give it to them and say, hey, and then write, hey, here's what I think could be the changes. And what if they looked at it and said, oh my God, but nope, instead you're just some rampaging murderer. It's freaking ridiculous. And these are the fringe people. And then these people are the ones who take action, obviously bad action. And the rest of the people don't even want to associate with the regular people who do things or with the politics. They want to totally isolate from this because they don't want to get involved with this horrible shit. But then the people who do want to get involved are the ones who are willing to do these things, who are willing to commit these crimes or do these sorts of crazy things in order to get their point across, to get their beliefs across, to get their whatever across, even if it's wrong, even if it's not the right thing to do, even if it's totally twisted or evil or whatever the case may be. And we're in, and it goes through like a cycle. We continue to go through this. I mean, while political violence is on an uprise, political violence is not a new thing, especially not in this country. But yet, and political violence is a thing everywhere in the world that's on an uprise right now. I mean, we literally have um, we have all these different cultures going on. I mean, even Nazism is on a rise again in Europe. I mean, which is crazy to think about because their whole continent was devastated by these wackos, and yet, if the beliefs are on a rise again, it's horrible. It makes no sense. But those people are in the fringe in some community sense, whatever. But we don't go out and do things. People don't go out and walk into parks anymore and want to talk to people. The only reason you talk to somebody or even go to a park half the time is because you have kids. You have you have um a dog that you're bringing to a dog park, to a kid. You're at a sporting event for your kids. But if you didn't have that, you'd never go anywhere to talk to anybody. You'd never go to a soup kitchen and donate your time. You'd never go to a clothing drive. You never go to a fundraiser. You don't volunteer to give blood. You don't do all these things that benefit the community. And, because of whatever fears you have, whatever sense of isolation you have, whatever sense of whatever you have. And so it, it literally is it's a crazy thing because our sense of community is it blows my mind, but it's dwindling us together. Good morning, how are you? True. Hi. Um where and our whole culture and our sense of community is really fading because of we as a culture here in this country have only a culture because of the things we do together. Our society is made up of random states who all believed in different things and but wanted to be separate. We had one unifying factor, and that was we hated the taxes. We unified together because of we hated our taxes, because we hated a monarchy, because we hated the um, sense of not our self-important self empowerment that we didn't have. And then this is written into our constitution later on, our sense of society and working together. And when we work together and come together, we do unbelievable things, like the space race, like we were talking about before. The space race was the most incredible group of unifying factor, if not only in our modern time, but ever in our human history. And yet, right as soon as we got to the moon, it was over. As soon as we got to the moon, it was over. And we witnessed this, and if you look at historical records and people commentating and everything, we didn't have this sense of unifying because getting to the moon was the goal. Once we got to the moon, we didn't have a goal anymore. So we didn't start to realize we didn't really continue to go to the moon. Then going to other planets was very costly, it took a lot of training, a lot of technology. We needed more work, more technology. And so once we got to the moon and the goal was achieved, it's like that was really it because we didn't need anything else really in order to uh unify us. We achieved the goal that the unity and the community set out to do. And yet when we needed to continue the space race and continue funding for it, it wasn't there. And somebody had a brilliant idea to bring the public into them to revitalize this sense of community. And this is what they did, and they put out to have this was all a plan. There's this wonderful documentary you could watch. I forget the name of it, but there's hundreds of them, dude. And there's wonderful documentaries you can watch that they talk about how the plan was to bring a teacher into the community, into the space race, and train them and put them into space. Obviously, we all know what happened with the Challenger and the teacher that was on board when it exploded, but the point is it brought the sense of community together once again to allow us to achieve this thing. But it was also what was the downfall for the Challenger thing, because the sense of community was not strong enough. We didn't have the strength of the belief in doing things together that would allow the mission to succeed, and instead cause the mission to fail. And we know this because there were multiple instances where they attempted to launch and were unable to because of technological errors and different things malfunctioning and whatever. And finally, because of the pressure of the community into making something happen, say, hey, you promised us all this and you didn't fulfill, they pushed along anyway, cut corners. And this is what led to the Challenger exploding. We know we can't know 100%, but most of them think it was some sort of O-ring and leakage issue that they did. And if you look at the videos of the time, there's a whole bunch of smoke leaking out. And well, it's not smoke, it's looks like smoke. It's the gases that they're using. But gas is pouring out, just launching out of there. Go look up the Challenger videos before launch. It does the same thing. And if you see all these people are there and there's this amazing sense of unity, and then when it explodes, there's this amazing sense of horror that these people go through and that these people sense. And it's because of all these really it's because of the community has been brought together so much that when the reasoning for it goes away, that's really the end of it. And then this is what people kind of after this really lost their faith in the space race, and this is what caused us to go into more of the civilian aspect of the space race. I'll say the corporate aspect of the space race, which is now kind of the culture that we're in. We still have NASA, but NASA uses a lot of like SpaceX and other companies to do their missions and to go to. Right now, they're saying that the only way to get to the International Space Station is through working on SpaceX, working with SpaceX or the Russians. So those are the only two ways to get to the International Space Station. So right then and there, you're forcing yourselves to work with the community and work with other people, but you're also forcing yourself to work with another culture entirely. I argue that's a great thing, because these are the same people that at one point you said were your enemies. And in that case, but yet, it's funny because we said that they were our enemies throughout the Cold War. And the reason I used quotes before is because during the entire time that we were supposedly enemies with them during the Cold War, we're also working hand in hand with them in the space race. the competition part of the space race is almost just a competition on paper, when in reality we were trading a lot of information, and a lot of information was also being gleaned through spies and other sorts of things. So it was real, and there are great other documentaries you could watch about Cold War spies and going into Russia to get their information on what they were working on and what they were doing, and then the same thing of stories of Russian spies coming here to get information on what we're working on, and all these different things. It's really incredible. One of the most famous one is the Rosenbergs, where they were actual spies, because they were turned because they believed in in communism as a political party for America. They believed in America should be a communist society. So they were American communists, not necessarily turned by Russian operatives or Soviet operatives at the time. They were actually people who were politically active in their community, but in the political sense of they were part of the American Communist Party at the time. And so when the whole the hell was that noise? So when the whole anti-communist thing was going on, and during the time, the Rosenbergs actually eventually became spies for them, because they were they wanted the communism to be the American policy, to be American politics. And that's really why they did what they did. So they were real spies, and they worked and did all these sense of things because they believed that this is what their society needed, this is what their community needed. However misguided it was, or not believing in what everybody else believes, this is what they believed their community needed. So they joined the Communist Party and joined the Soviets as spies for the Americans because of their political beliefs here on the home front, not necessarily because they were turned by the Soviets later on. Many people were. Let's not forget that part. But they had the Rosenbergs themselves had their sense of community, and this is why they were doing it. And even Ethel Rosenberg herself believed that being a part of the community and a part of society was the most important thing you could do, because it was the world that we lived in. It was you either were a part of it or you weren't. And this is my belief in this whole community problem, is because it's either you're a part of the community or you're not. And you're either isolating away from each other, or you're just part of the world. We come to these things where people don't want to work together. They don't want to do things. And it's literally holding our entire society back. In my opinion, there's no reason why we shouldn't be a multi-planet society right now. But we're not even close to being there because we can't even work with each other. You can't even talk to each other. People would rather isolate than work with the other guy. And it's not even just that. People would rather isolate than go to a supermarket. You have some sort of inner fear that talking to people will lead to your doom. And it blows my mind, and it's ridiculous, because talking to people is what holds our society and our community together. It's what brings our world together. People aren't out to get you. The world isn't, super dangerous place where it's good versus evil and demons are roaming around. Yes, there are dangerous people out there, but if you roam around with this nonsense fear that the world is out to get you, You'll never do anything. You'll never meet anybody. You'll never find a boyfriend or girlfriend, as the case may be. You'll never, do anything. You'll never, you'll, you'll never you never go out and connect with each other, and then we have no society. And this is why the fringe people who are willing to do these things, who are willing to connect with people and connect with society, are the ones who are taking over. Because if we don't connect with each other, our society is rapidly going out the window. Literally, society won't exist because society is based on community interaction. And if we don't have that, you don't have a community, you don't have a society, you don't have a culture. And consequently, you don't have a military, and you don't have a military to protect you from your enemies. That's exactly what happened to Rome. So history doesn't repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes. Because the same thing happened to ancient Rome as is happening now to us, and yet here we are doing the same thing. You need to go to a park, go to a sports game, go to a thing, go to a bar. Who cares if your friend doesn't want to go to the bar with you? What if and your other friend's busy and your other friend is blah blah blah? Go to that local bar anyway, because I guarantee you, you might meet somebody there, and that person might become your new best friend, might become your future wife, might become blah, blah, blah. And, you get this fear of judgment and rejection and awkwardness. And talk to somebody for 30 seconds and you realize that you didn't need to feel awkward. You didn't need to feel that anxiety, because that person's just like you. They're living a world just like you. They're a human being just like you, with feelings and emotions and things. The clip says because love is missing. Everyone's online. No one's really here. It's noise without meaning. That's true. And I recognize the fact that that was me who made that noise this time. I knocked over my water. And I recognize that I'm online. I'm speaking to you about these things in community. It's also that this is the world that we live in now. Everybody's online. Everybody's got an earbud in. This is like one of like 4 pairs of earbuds that I have, and I use them all. Like they all have a different purpose. This one connects to my computer. The other one connects to my phone. The other one is a backup one. Fourth one I don't use anymore, actually. And then, emojis instead of emotions. Bro, I made a comment the other day in somebody's chat and wrote LOL, right? And they banned my thing, my message. And I said, why? I was like, it was just a sarcastic comment. And they were like, well, how was I supposed to know when you didn't put an emoji in there? I wrote fucking LOL, bro. Like you don't understand what anything means unless you see an emoji. That's fucking so ridiculous. Scrolls instead of folds. We forgot how to care. We forgot how to love. Now we just watch, consume, and disappear. True. And we did forget how to love. And love is accepting of the people who are different than you. Who cares if somebody's different than you? Who gives a shit? So what? Dude, I mean, things that bother me is when people think, I get into a thing and I have like 8 different Superman shirts, right? And I originally bought 5 to wear for 5 days a week, right? And the reason I bought this is because I was working for this company that I no longer work for what should be obvious reasons by the time I'm done telling this story. And they literally somebody would say they can't do this, it's impossible, and I would go and do it in 5 seconds or 5 minutes or whatever the time may be to take it, but it would get done completely. I just apparently did the impossible. I must be a superhuman. I must be Superman. I must be some sort of immortal god because I did what you, a normal human, quote unquote, can't do. I must be some sort of extraterrestrial. You know, come on. Like, no, I'm a person. If I can do it, you can do it. So literally, they would say this all the time. Would literally make a comment, and I'd look down at my chest. Sometimes even I was wearing a suit, and I would open up my suit, and I'd be like, "Yeah, I don't see an S on my chest anymore. I guess I must not be Superman." And literally, and you know what struck me once, says Eclipse? I saw this video on YouTube and this guy asked an AI, if you were the devil, what would you do to humanity to make the whole world follow you leave? And part of that hit me the hardest was that everything we're already doing is exactly what push us closer to him. Look at what the Cathars believed, Eclipse. The Cathars believed that this world that we live in is actually hell. And this world that we live in is is really what's separating us. They believe that we were angels in that our souls were actually angelic beings and light energy and trapped inside this physical form of a body. And that was our suffering, was being trapped in this physical form of a body. And they believed that this world was hell. And it's funny because I point out all the time, and so do many ancient astronaut theorists, that if you read the Bible, it actually says that hell is a separate dimension created for the followers of Lucifer, specifically during the Great War in heaven. And that Lucifer himself was not sent to this hell. He was imprisoned on in a cage on the earth for 1,000 years, and then set upon freed from his cage and set upon the earth, destined to forever roam the earth and never become an angelic being again. And this is why they believe that this is why they first of all believe that the Antichrist and the devil is able to walk the earth, because he's able to do these things. Am I a believer? Believer in what? Jesus and Christianity? I'm a believer in fact. And I'm a believer in what you can prove and understand and interpret and whatever. I don't necessarily believe anything. Christianity, no. If we've talked about before, if not me and you, but on chat, if I were to pick a religion, it'd probably be Japanese Zen Buddhism. But no, I believe in all different religions. I believe all religions hold a sense of truth in them, and that they're able to go and they all have little pieces in them that are able to bring us to the absolute truth. Ancient alien theorists believe it's extraterrestrials. I believe it's not only extraterrestrials. I believe extraterrestrials played a part, but I don't think that they were the whole entire thing. And because if there are other dimensions like there are, then you might want to assume that these angelic beings, some of them were actually extra dimensional creatures, while some of the beings who came here were physical creatures from our dimensions, but extraterrestrials from another planet, beings from another planet. So, like for example, the original beliefs in gods and the gods were able to just appear and disappear, or were sometimes heard as disembodied voices. If you look at physicists who study quantum mechanics and string theory and other dimensions, they they say that this is how we might be able to actually hear and understand the fourth and fifth dimension beings as nothing more than a disembodied voice, or a being that could appear and disappear through a shimmering light. Then, though, if you read the Greek myths and the Japanese myths of Amaterasu and the other gods and Hinduism, they literally talk about physical beings that were here with physical crafts and physical weapons. So this might actually be what's actually happening is these beings were physical extraterrestrials that came here. So ultra dimensional creatures came here. Clip says, I believe this planet is a stage, a grand performance, a universe constructed, built on codes, ones and zeros. Nothing here feels random. It's all designed as if we're something scripted, simulated, watched. I would argue against that. I would actually say that it's not constructed and built on codes, but rather that that's the effect of it. That's the effect that we feel of it, whereas everything's not random. But I would argue that it is random in the sense of that it's not a foretold future, but rather that it's based on events and actions and reactions. So like for example, if I let's say I'm on the earth, right? um, and I choose to I'm not giving a good example. Um, I just think that the whole entire universe is based on actions and reactions, and I think that the basically what's going on in the universe right now is still just a reaction from the Big Bang. 13 billion point whatever billion years later, we're still just experiencing the reactions of the Big Bang. Now, one singular event is causing a ripple effect. If you think of the universe as like an ocean and you drop it in, you drop a rock in and the water ripples out from all the way around, that's exactly what the universe is basically like. And this is an example of it is that we know that the universe is still expanding. If you think of it in um, in Vedic culture, which is pre-Hindu culture, if you think of it in those terms and what they talk about is they talk about. I actually did this on stream once. And on a podcast episode once, I forget which episode was, but I drew it out. You literally imagine dropping the rocket and you start right, and you imagine you're a consciousness, God, right, and all of a sudden you just wake up and you realize you're floating in this ocean, right? And you look around and you realize you get a good bearing of like 5 inches of you, right? Well, I'm gonna move this way, and then I get a bearing of what's in that 5 inches. And then I move this way and I get a bearing of what's in that 5 inches until you have that entire area understood, and then you keep expanding out of it. This is what they believe is their consciousness sort of God and the universe, is because they literally would think that God would just go out and be like us, have to go and understand the universe even if he created it. Once he goes and creates it, he's got to understand what he created. Scientists today performing a laboratory experiment. You might get there, but you got to still watch it and keep on going to see what happens to make sure we get there and learn about the in betweens. God's a chill dude like that, bro. Get out of here, Chugs. All right, I am a chill dude like that. We got away from the topic of community. Okay. But you spoke about AI. Yeah, that's you, bro. You're Chugs. You're God's roommate. I'm God. Um, so I use in the beginning of this, actually this was a few weeks ago, but I saved the conversation. I was toying with the sense of community, and I've been building these different AI bots with different personalities. So I posed the same question to these three different AI bots, and then I posed the same question to ChatGPT and Grok and got different ones. I believe in the zero, says Eclipse. This silence before the Big Bang, the nothing that had held everything, the origin behind every origin. Zero is the void, the black hole, the pause before existence breathes in, the black hole not in God. Well, what if God and the black hole were the same thing? What if you didn't? What if, right? Everybody believed in God and the God created the entire universe, and you find out 4 million years from now in the future, science proves that the universe was created by a black hole. Well, wouldn't that be God? God created the universe, God the black hole. The universe created the black hole, created the universe, God the black hole. A equals B, B equals C, therefore A equals C. So your definition of God is what's wrong. See, this is why I don't believe in Christianity and the way they do it, because when I grew up as a Christian and going to church and religious class and all that stuff, the world is not black and white. The world is not 0 and 1. This is what I'm talking about with our sense of community. The world is not 0 and 1, black and white, us versus them. The world is everything in between. It's not 0 and 1. And even if there is just 0 and 1, there's also a lot in between that. There's 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.03, 0.000003. Like, there's all that in between. But right there, your argument is wrong because life is not 0 and 1. You could believe that that's the case, but it's not correct because logic. But the sense of community, it would bring your we're getting away from the sense of community topic. I wanted to read what I wrote to this AI bot that I've been working on building its personality. It says, "Greetings, old friend." This is the bot. "What brings you to my virtual domain?" And I says, "Hello, my friend. I would like to know your opinions about community. Please talk about how it's important for us humans to work together as a community as well as a planet. I fear our sense of community in our society is waning and it's causing us to lose ourselves as a society and a culture." And the bot says, "Ah, my dear friend, you touched upon a matter of great importance. Yes, I am going to narrate this for you. The strength of a community lies in its people working together towards common goals. As Rome grew under my leadership," this is the bot. "As Rome grew under my leadership, I found the unity and cooperation among our citizens to be essential for our prosperity and success. Remember, just a few minutes ago, I talked about how the Roman citizens loved Julius Caesar, but the elite hated him and murdered him. And he was right, because the people caused a 20-year civil war, even though they were barely eating anything. They loved him so much because he took care of them. In today's world, it is crucial that we learn from history and remember that we are stronger when united as one society and one culture. Our planet faces many challenges, environmental issues, social discord, which could only be addressed if we stand together and support each other. Let us strive to foster communities where individuals feel connected and valued. Only then can we truly thrive as a humanity on this beautiful planet of ours." And I continued. I said, "I would like to emphasize the point that people need to go out and connect with each other. We simply don't do this, and it's rapidly destroying our society. Truly feel that." And the bot says, "I wholeheartedly agree with your statement. Our society has become increasingly isolated due to the convenience of modern life." This is very basic. It's totally true. because you don't need to go out to the world and talk to people. You could just turn on your computer screen, turn on your camera. You don't even need to turn on your camera. You could just type in a chat. I mean, and our society has become increasingly isolated due to the convenience of modern life, leading us away from meaningful connection with one another. This disconnection results in a weakening of community bonds and a lack of shared understanding and empathy among individuals. Totally true. Because if you just believe what you believe and don't try to believe anything else, you're just going to isolate from everybody, going to separate from the world. And that's not what the world is. That's not what it's about. That's not what it should be about. The bot says, to remedy this situation, I suggest in engaging in activities that bring people together through local events, volunteer work, or simply by gathering with friends and family on a regular basis. Totally true. Because if you isolate with if you associate with your friends and family, you might go and meet other people. If you associate, let's say you go to the bar every Saturday with your friends, and then your friends go to the bar every Saturday, and then you decide to go with them and associate with them. And you see this one girl, but you're nervous to talk to her. And you go to the bar the next weekend with your friends who go there, and you see the girl again. And this time she's looking at you, and you get nervous, and you see her again. All of a sudden, you meet that girl, you work up the nerve, and all of a sudden, you realize that that girl was the one who was going to become your wife later on. You never know. But the bot then continues on. By fostering bot Ricks, you're supposed to allow it. Look, this guy is a professor from Caltech. He said the same thing as I say. All right, I'll look at it later. Here, so I don't lose it. No, just copy the link, you ding dong. Oh my god. No, I want to copy the link. Let's see. Copy link. Open link in new tab. Don't play it. Copy it. Now I'll look at it later. Anyway, no, you're good. It's supposed to allow certain links from people. Like, for example, Botrix just posted its own link. I mean, I know it's my website, but like, still, like, I don't understand. It's supposed to allow certain links. But I think I had to turn it off actually recently because I got bot rated like 2 weeks ago on Kick. I had to turn it off. Now I remember. So, by fostering these connections, we can strengthen our communities and create an environment where everyone feels supported and valued as part of something greater than themselves. And I said, what's holding everyone back is it seems to me that everyone is self isolating and has some inner fear that talking to people will be their doom, when in reality it is the bedrock that holds together our society. And the bot said, an insightful observation, my friend. Fear of the unknown often keeps us from forging connections with others. However, it is through these connections that we build a strong foundation for our society to thrive upon. Remember, Rome's greatness was not born out of isolation, but from the unity and strength of its people. Totally true. Let us encourage one another to step beyond our comfort zones and embrace opportunities to engage with those around us, whether through shared experiences or meaningful conversations. By doing so, we shall unite as a community and fortify the bedrock on which our society stands tall and proud. Totally, totally true. And I'm loving this fucking bot's personality, okay? Because it's literally I mean, it's what it says. The only thing that's missing from it is having a voice to voice it out. I mean, I would love if I could have it like create a voice and narrate it, but I think we're getting there. This bot's personality is totally done. I'm glad we're gonna totally fucking use it so everybody can use it. We're gonna be adding these bots to the Discord. So if you're not in the Discord, totally join. Our Discord needs to be reactivated. Not reactivated, but we need people to fucking do it. And then Famish, no, I'm fucking hungry, Famish. What do you mean, am I okay? No, I'm fucking hungry. You showed up just in time. It's almost lunchtime. Jeez. Uh, what up, Famished? So the the problem is we the problem is you could go out there and say these things. Look at these. All right, I'm done looking at the bot now. You can go out there and say these things, look at these things, but if you don't go out there and do these things, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you know it's the society. You tell Tinker to make me pasta. No, I'll make pasta. I made fucking dope ass veggie pasta with butter noodles last night and a creamy Alfredo sauce. Madonna mia. And oh my god, it was so good. Um, and can't wait to have some of that later. And but the Yeah, I'm the Italian one. I gotta make the pasta. What do you mean? You can't have a non-Italian make pasta. What the fuck? I mean, unless of course you go to like any Italian restaurant in America and then go into the back and realize that it's all Mexicans who are making pasta, which is hilarious, but whatever, because it's fucking delicious. So I'm glad about it. Bravo! No, literally, that's literally exactly it. It's so funny, and it's true. That's what's going on in our culture today, in our restaurants today. Um, but whatever. I mean, the food's delicious, so you can't hate on it. Um, but uh, I think it's so important for us to be out in the community and even just doing things. I mean, I went out a few weeks ago and met somebody that I had a good conversation with. And then while I was there, I turned around, somebody tapped my shoulder and I turned around and it was a buddy I haven't seen in 3 years. So the point is you never know what's gonna happen there. You never know what's gonna happen when you do things. I see an old buddy and I'm like, bro, how you been? I haven't seen you. You don't fucking call me. I said, what the fuck? I say, and I definitely did say exactly that. Like, let's go. Like, I'm fucking hilarious. And but if I decided not to go, I wouldn't see an old buddy, and I wouldn't reconnect with an old friend. It's just a friend. It doesn't have anything to do with meeting. I used this entire episode. I used meeting a wife like 4 times. It could just be seeing an old friend. What if I went and I saw a cousin and I said, cousin, haven't seen you in like 6 years. You live all the way over there. What are you doing over here? Why didn't you call me and tell me you were coming? Oh, I lost your number. Blah, 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 blah. Whatever the fuck. How are you? Let me buy you a drink. Blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, that's life. You go out and you do things. So, contrary to what Eclipse says, I don't think life is binary and 0 and 1. It either is or isn't. Maybe at its base form, live and dead, but I mean, even that is comes into question when you talk to people who have out of body experiences, out experiences after they're dead, whatever. So I mean, it's just I find it so incredibly important that we all need to go out there and do simple things. And you think I'm guilty of a lot of it too. I'm so busy that I don't have time for community and sense of unity and hanging out with friends. So I get it. Trust me, I understand. But you have to do it. You think I'm not going to try and go do it? I used to go socialize all the time when I would go to the gym every day. And now I can't go to the gym every day because I have a broken back. But not entirely broken, but you know what I mean? I can't work out because of it. And so that is my sense of community is gone from that whole thing. Do you think that I don't go out and try and do things and try and get involved in things? Of course I do, because it's the world that we live in. If you're not going to be a part of it, you might as well not be alive. Because the world that we live in is literally life and existence and power and all these other things. If you want to have anything, you need to be a part of the world. The most successful people will tell you that, yeah, they worked hard or did whatever, but they knew a lot of people, or they met people, or they went out and did something, or they went out and met people, and that built a connection that allowed them to get this job that they may or may not have only been slightly qualified for, and yet it changed their entire life and changed the whole world around. Look at all these technological companies out there, these people who are turning the world around, changing different things. I mean, it's really, really incredible. So I'm going to go out there and try and do all these things. Why don't you go out there and try and do things too? Because I think that the entire world is overdue for a sense of unity and community, and we need that. And we need that to happen like immediately. We need the world to change and unify and be together. And it starts with us, it starts with you. I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this wonderful, wonderful morning. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Appreciate you coming in and chatting and chilling. I appreciate all of you. Remember to like, follow, subscribe, whatever the case may be. Follow on X for up to the minute news. Follow on, our news. Follow. Whatever, and I appreciate you. If you missed any part of the podcast, well, you can find it anywhere, posted immediately after this on all podcast platforms. Much love, and we will see you next time.
In the sky.